For those tough wake-ups.
Stats are misleading.
It's Marsh and Melo.
Major foul.
Wake up to serious sports talk.
Key fist is there.
It's Marsh.
The CFL, baby.
And Melo.
I love Canada.
It's Marsh and Melo.
This is football.
For those tough wake-ups.
They're heating up.
It's Marsh and Melo.
Coming your way, Hamilton.
Wake up to serious sports talk.
Gas tank gonna be full.
It's Marsh.
In Canada.
And Melo.
Why not, eh?
It's Marsh and Melo.
Thank you, Canada.
Everybody's doing it. I was just reading the back of these like little tubes of BioSteel electrolyte.
Yeah,
it's kind of terrifying. I use a lot of these, and I love BioSteel products. Like I would friggin' love to have BioSteel on as a sponsor with us because I actually I drink way too much of this electrolyte stuff throughout the day. I've got like 40 different canisters of every flavor they have, the sport greens, all that stuff. And but you read the back of it and it's like, man, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this little tiny packet. I'd never realized this. Leucine, glutamine, valine, isoleucine, glycine, taurine, potassium, calcium, magnesium, choline, thiamine, niacin, vitamin B6, riboflavin, pantothenic acid, zinc, folate, vitamin B12, biotin, non-medical ingredients, citric acid, malic acid, natural flavors, sodium chloride, sodium citrate dihydrate, whatever that is, purified stevia leaf extract, a lecithin, and then it gives you all these like recommendations and stuff. And it's like, hey, only take a certain number of times throughout the day. And if you're going through this or this or this medically, don't take this. I'm like, I thought this was just supposed to hydrate me. This is why I take these, because I'm like working out, hot yoga and stuff. And you're like, okay, I want to be hydrated, Kyle. That's all.
that's all. Remember when BioSteel, there was like a commercial every like 3 commercials on Raptors broadcast?
Yeah.
And the face of BioSteel was Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, it was Connor McDavid and Andrew Wiggins, was it not? It was the whole drink.
Yeah.
It was drink the pink, and then
the pink, yeah.
And then they made a billion other flavors, and I bought them all. And that's why I continue to use all these BioSteel. The sport greens are actually great, though. The sport green, it's for me, it's. I know this is not a live read for BioSteel, but they're so good because you can basically just sneak in all of these different vitamins and things that you need without having to just be like popping pills throughout the day in order to get vitamins. It's like, no, it's just a big scoop of like essentially dehydrated greens that are fantastic, and they actually taste pretty good too. There's some good flavors of that stuff. So anyways, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. Thank you, as always, to Fox 40, our actual sponsor, who does help this show be a reality. Of course, if you'd like to be able to get back in the game, you can do so. Go to fox40shop.com. They are the worldwide leaders in whistle technology for all your whistle needs and much, much more. Coaching boards and plenty of more good stuff. Fox40shop.com. CFP15 is the promo code to use. And Sawdust City Brewing, of course, as well. Brewery fresh beer delivered directly to your door. They got all sorts of fun stuff here in the fall. Excited this week, Kyle, because I will be sampling with Sam Corbet of Sawdust City Lone Wine, which is the 11.2% American barley wine that they have created. Sam is just coming off of the Canadian Brewing Awards in Quebec City. I chatted with him from his hotel room while he was there, and the package that they sent me, the 4 beers to taste this month with him, he picked the one that was the lowest alcohol content because he said, we've had like 500 beers since we left Ontario to come to Quebec City and be at this Canadian Brewing Awards. So he was like, I just picked the one that had the least amount of alcohol in it. I'm like, yeah, I would probably do the very same thing. But so those are, of course, our partners, and we want you to support them. And our new partner, Ontario University Athletics. Very cool to be able to have them on. Now, I do have some bad news, which is that
Master lost.
Well, that too. I'm sure that Dwayne Ford is going to destroy me on the broadcast coming up this Friday, because Western and Mac played and it didn't go great for Mac. But I already have planned my comeback to when Dwayne rips me for McMaster getting beat up in that game. And so tune in Friday when I have the call of the Alouettes in Toronto against the Argos to find out my rebuttal to what Dwayne Ford has to say about Western beating up on McMaster. But one piece of kind of semi-sarcastic bad news, and then one piece of actual bad news I want to bring up here off the top. And I don't like starting the show with bad news. We'll get to the CFL recap and all the rest. But the semi-sarcastic bad news, we did a great OUA show yesterday. Every Sunday at 10 a.m., myself, Connor O'Neill, and Wade Zanketta are going live on our YouTube page for CFP and basically giving you a half-hour recap of everything that we noticed from the day before. It's kind of like a college football roundup for just the OUA. We did a great show. There was no audio. So
Oh, no.
so we did a full half-hour show that we loved. We finished it. We are like, man, that was fun. That's great. And then we posted it, and something went wrong, and we're gonna find out what it was and make
Just
sure.
overlay like Reese Davis and the guys from College Game Day. Just overlay it, and people won't even notice.
What we're actually going to do is that Connor and Wade on All Canadian coming up tomorrow on Tuesday, September 21st. They are going to dig deep into the OUA, and that's going to serve as the OUA show for this week, because we really did love the show that we did on Sunday morning, and we hope that people will use that as a home for their OUA coverage on Sunday mornings to kind of get that quick recap, because I get it. There's a lot going on in life. If you just want to dive in and enjoy 5-6 minutes of hardcore football talk on your university team, I think that's going to be the place for people to go and enjoy doing that. So, but anyways, that's the semi-sarcastic bad news. The actual bad news, if you've been following along with Canadian football, is that the University of Ottawa GG's program, we have to start the show with this today, because I cannot wrap my head around the way that this splashed across my timeline yesterday. I'm watching the NFL games and enjoying seeing football players out living their dreams, and I'm enjoying being able to see the CFL have a great doubleheader, 2 games Friday, 2 games Saturday. Love the schedule, love the layout, lots of energy, excitement, quarterbacks getting starts, lots of storylines. And then the university games happen on Saturday afternoon, and I watch the University of Ottawa lose 11-10 to the University of Toronto Varsity Blues. Congratulations to Toronto. And I think, it's a tough loss for Ottawa, but they'll get over it. And then the word came out on Saturday evening, Sunday morning, publicly at the very least, that there is a 5th-year GG that passed away suddenly after the game was done. And I don't know if you had heard this, Kyle, or seen this, if this had kind of come across your timeline at all.
Yeah.
But I follow a lot of Canadian university football teams, and so everybody was passing along their condolences. But the University of Ottawa put out a statement that says, "Dear members of the university community, it is with a heavy heart that I bring you some very sad news over the weekend. Francis Perron, one of our medical engineering students and a defensive lineman in his 5th season with GG's football, died shortly after a game between U Ottawa and the University of Toronto. A bright, passionate, and caring person, Francis poured himself into his craft as a player and his academic pursuit of becoming an engineer. In the classroom, he was as big of a star as he was on the field, becoming a multiple-time U Sports academic All-Canadian while studying mechanical engineering," which, by the way, I've played football with engineers. I have absolutely no idea how those people balance those two things. But originally from Sherbrooke, Quebec, Francis first joined the GG's football team in 2017 after a stellar career at Cégep de Sherbrooke. Francis' love for the game was present in his play, but even more so in the relationship he built with his teammates. His memory will live on through our vast network of loving family, friends, and all those whose lives he touched. On behalf of the University of Ottawa, this is from the President and Vice Chancellor, Jacques Fremont. He says, "I offer my condolences to his family, friends, and loved ones. The thoughts of all members of our community are with you. Also, I would like to thank our colleagues at the University of Toronto for their steadfast support during this tragic event." I have seen people that I played with have family members that have passed away recently, and that hit like a ton of bricks. I can't imagine how anybody from the University of Ottawa can wrap their mind around playing a football game when going through something like this. I mean, even people that I didn't actually play with that were in other varsity sports at McMaster, people you would just pass in the hallway, and some of them unfortunately have tragically passed away. I think about there was a wrestler from McMaster, I believe Jason Buckle, that passed away not that long ago, and I used to sit in the sauna with that guy once in a while and just like shoot the shit, you know what I mean? And he passed away tragically as well over the last year, and it's super shocking, and I have no idea how Ottawa is supposed to get back out onto the football field, and I don't know. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine. And I wanted to bring it up and just say from CFP, along with everybody else in the Canadian football community, that we feel for his family and we feel for the GG's program, because I just can't, as you can tell from my rambling, I can't wrap my mind around it. It's an impossible circumstance to try and understand. It's so unfair and it's so cruel.
And it's, not just that the Ottawa GGs have to continue a football season. It's the fact that preparation starts tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like,
supposed to, but who knows? Like,
I know.
I can't imagine. I know. I mean, if something that ridiculously tragic had happened at McMaster, I have a real hard time imagining that Steph Potasic would have said to us at Mac when I was there, hey, get out there on a Tuesday, or, day one, or, hey, let's start watching film and breaking things down. It's like their program's probably going to need to press pause for at the very least a couple of days. I mean, hell, I had a teammate whose mom passed away tragically when I was at Mac, and our entire team basically carpooled, took a bus, and we went to the service to show our support. And we paused practice that day, and it was a woman I'd never met before, but I just wanted to be there for our teammates. So we all just went and were present at the service. And so yeah, I don't know how, and this is a really difficult situation too, because Marcel Belfay is now the head man at the University of Ottawa, and he's coming off a loss, and I'm sure, grinding away on the tape and wants to dive in and wants to make his football team better. He's already going through a COVID season and travel restrictions and all these different things. And then this gets dropped into you. And not only is it, and again, I'm not trying to do football analysis on this, and there's no comparison shopping on death, so please don't think that's what I'm doing. But like, it's a veteran leader on your team. It's a smart guy who understands campus, who, if anybody had any questions, could help them understand what this is all about. And just not there anymore for a coach who, albeit Belfay's been around, he's seen a lot of things, but nothing prepares you for this. And I just don't know what the coach's playbook. If it was me, I would be asking the OUA for a week off.
Yeah.
Like, that's just me. But again, I don't know if there's flexibility in that. And I mean, they're already working on a condensed schedule. I don't know what the logistics of that would be, but it's without thinking about, next steps moving forward. It's just, I can't believe that we go into week one of the OUA season, wait so long to get on the field, and this happens. And for anybody wondering as well, like, I don't have any details on this. There's not been any release publicly, and I haven't had time to reach out to anybody. And obviously I have no interest in reporting on exactly what the reasoning was behind this, but it's so unfair to everybody involved, the most of which, of course, his family and his friends. And so I just wanted to pass that along off the top here and make sure it was addressed, because the Canadian football community is not a very big one. It's a passionate one, and there's fans across the country, but in terms of the coaches and the networks and the teams and the players and playing against guys that you played with in high school or in CEGEP, or it's the University of Ottawa are the ones that we're thinking of here, but anybody who was in CEGEP that played with or against Francis, or anybody from the University of Ottawa who's crossed paths with him over the last 5 years, or maybe somebody who hosted him on his recruiting trip, or the former coaches at the University of Ottawa who were around him and understand. I mean, it's I went to a funeral recently, as I say, for one of my teammates' moms who passed away suddenly, and at that funeral there were 3 or 4 OUA head football coaches from schools that we didn't go to. Like, they were there to show their support because they understood, they had heard it through the grapevine of, hey, something sad's happened here and we need to band together. So I hope everybody does that for Francis and the GGs and everybody involved.
Yeah, and hopefully everybody in that community in Ottawa can come together and try to, help the rest of that football team with the mourning of a teammate, and then eventually, whether it's this week or next week, return to a football schedule that's very tough to do.
Yeah, I don't know how they do that, but I'm just looking at the schedule here for the University of Ottawa GGs, just pulling up this week. And again, Connor and Wade are going to tee up all things OUA for you leading up throughout the week, and make sure that you stay locked to All Canadian for all of that. But in week number 2 here, coming up in the 25th, they're scheduled to play at Richardson Stadium at Queens. And I don't know how you're supposed to do that with a 3 p.m. kickoff coming up. It's supposed to be this Saturday, because after that it's Ottawa Carleton, and then after that they have a bye week. I mean, maybe they can shift their games into a different spot. Oh, actually, no, it's not a bye week. I think it's Thanksgiving there, so they're actually still playing that week. But anyways, the logistics of that are beside the point. I just wanted to mention that. So let's move on and talk some CFL here, Kyle. Let's begin chronologically back on Friday night, the first game of the doubleheader. I gotta say, I do love the 2 games Friday, 2 games Saturday deal. To me, that's so much better. Than the only thing that's better is 1 on Thursday, 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, or 1 on Thursday, 2 on Friday, 1 on Saturday. Because the Saturday triple header, man, I love football, but
like the 4, 7, and 10 kickoffs.
that takes some serious commitment. And I'll be honest too, sometimes with the late games, I'm sleepy. And I like to DVR, and I like to actually wake up and watch the game without commercials quickly in the morning. So having the 7 o'clock and the 10 o'clock kickoff Friday, Saturday, beautiful. Love it. And it gives you the opportunity Saturday afternoons if you want to dabble into some college football or the OUA or whatever it might be. So I do love the layout of the schedule. I was actually just watching this game before we came on to start taping the podcast here, and I have no idea how Calgary lost is my takeaway from this situation. And that's not really a knock against the Ticats in saying, hey, you were god awful. David Watford was 19 of 22, and they had a ton of rushing attempts. They were 43% pass play calls in this game. The average in the CFL is well over 2/3. It's about 68 to 70%, depending on team. Some teams you'll get up into the mid 70s. They were 43%. Like, they went diamond full house. Poppy White alongside Jackson Bennett, alongside Malik Irons, alongside Tim White, alongside Dunbar. They were just like, hey, there's a bunch of bodies in the backfield, and David Watford ends up with 10 rushes for 35 yards, 3.5 yards per carry. They essentially, Calgary was saying, sure, if you're going to be reading us, we'll just force the quarterback to keep the ball all the time, and then we'll rally and make tackles. And the high percentage passing was great. Like, the percentage is 86.3% completion percentage. The problem is the average depth of target's like 4 yards. Yeah. Right. Everything was near the line of scrimmage. It was, and again, not a knock on Tommy Condell or the offense or the Ticats. This is the reality. They were running a high school offense. They were running a very simplified power run high school offense that 22 passing attempts in the CFL is obviously below average. Part of the reason for that might have been their continued offensive line struggles to try and protect when you're dealing with just a normal drop back, straight up passer. Watford didn't really feel like that, and they certainly didn't take the handcuffs off him to let him kind of show that he could do a lot more in the passing game. The only attempt that was over about 10, 15 yards was Nikola Kalinic late in the game on a play action bootleg on the corner route. And he still kind of like threw it, a little behind him and stuff. So if you're Calgary, you come out of this, what the hell are you thinking? Because I just don't know how you get beat on the score sheet by a team that's throwing for 149 yards.
Okay, first thing, I'm with you. It was tough to watch, and I put out a tweet in the first half of the game. I was like, the energy in Tim Hortons Field, it was just quiet. Like, that was the most quiet I've ever heard Tim Hortons Field during a game that was still in the balance. Like, in the first quarter, it was quiet. And I think it was quiet because people were looking at the offense and they weren't happy. They were like, this is rough. And that was going to be, the reality of having David Watford as quarterback. Look, I don't not like David Watford. I think he's a serviceable guy if he's the number 3 guy on the depth chart. You're not going to win a lot of games with David Watford as a starting quarterback. Credit to Coach O and to Tommy Condell for drawing up a game plan to fit David Watford's skill set. But it wasn't enjoyable to watch. And how consistent can you be with that type of game plan? I have no idea. But Calgary had as much struggles offensively as I've ever seen Calgary have struggles offensively. And it played in to the Ticats game plan. And then Ticats defense just stepped up and played a hell of a game. Yeah. And then Simone Lawrence gets into the end zone. We'll see. I mean, look, David Watford goes out and beats Calgary at home. He might go out on Wednesday and beat the Ottawa Red Blacks in Ottawa. Just, that's the reality of the situation for Ottawa. The Red Blacks are not a great football team. But if you're going to beat, the Edmontons of the CFL or, the Winnipegs or the Saskatchewan Roughriders, you don't have a chance playing offensive football like that. And unless your defense is going to put up scores every single week, by the way, Simone Lawrence already 2 pick sixes this season.
Crazy.
Unless you're going to, rely on your defense to put points on the board themselves, it's not going to be consistent. But for the Ticats, it's about treading water until Dane Evans gets back or Jeremiah Masoli gets somewhat healthy. I would expect David Watford to start again against Ottawa. But again, we wait and we see.
Yeah, who knows at this point? I think if Masoli can come back, then you're going to pull the trigger on that as quickly as possible. Because to your point, if Dane is out 4 to 6 weeks, so let's say you're down 1 week, you got 3 more weeks to go. And I just don't think that what we saw there. Now, again, I always have a hard time with backup quarterbacks and trying to project their evolution, like trying to project where they could go moving forward, because Dominique Davis, we saw him week 1 look awful against the Calgary Stampeders and still get a victory, which was kind of what we just saw from Watford. And then he comes home in week 2 of 2019, plays against Saskatchewan and has the best game of his life. 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards, high completion percentage, made lots of great throws, great reads, threw some dimes. It was just like, but then obviously he fell back to earth very, very quickly, and he's stayed down at earth. And so I'm looking at David Watford and I'm thinking, I don't know if there's any room for progression here. They do have practice time now dedicated, you would think, if he's going to be the starter, to him, to certain packages, to expanding stuff. But the reason I make that high school offense comment is because when you're really watching what they were doing, they're lining up essentially in like a full house diamond where there's a running back behind and 2 running backs to each side. And they're running like a fly sweep motion, which is something that they've been doing out of a bunch of different formations, which I think is just to alleviate the offensive line giving up pressure and make those defensive ends kind of slow down a little bit and wonder if anybody's flying across their face. And again, sometimes that backfires because you end up with a loss of 7 if they jump that jet sweep. But if you have Watford who's being able to read, okay, defensive end is jumped outside, handoff inside, gash them. But there were so many times where it was obvious that the Calgary Stampeders were saying, we want David Watford to keep the football and try to run against us. Like, we're not going to give him the read, because the defenses will pick and choose. Very rarely do they go into a game and they're like, we don't know if we're going to get read on this zone read stuff or on these fly sweeps or on these veer plays, and so we're just going to end up shrugging and playing it however it happens. They're like, no, they're being coached too. And so the defense was being coached, make Watford keep it. So every time that they stuck the ball in the belly of a running back, they would attack the running back, force Watford to pull the ball out, and then just believe that they could rally and make tackles. And they did, as evidenced by the 3.5 yards per carry in that spot. But if you have a more varied attack and you see that you're not getting production from the quarterback run game, you go away from it. They just didn't have much else in the package. Like, it looked like they were essentially their base run package out of that diamond or full house formation in this game against Calgary was 4 plays. It was off tackle, it was inside zone, it was fly sweep, and it was quarterback keep on basically like a pull with a pulling guard. They were running 4 or 5 plays. It felt like, again, I don't have the play sheet in front of me. I'm sure it's more varied than 4 or 5 plays, but to the naked eye, it's essentially a 5-play set that they ran 20 times and didn't get very much production, had a bunch of 2-and-outs, but they win. Like, this is the crazy thing is, okay, now going into Ottawa, worst team in the CFL, can you beat the Ottawa Red Blacks running that package with a slight evolution? Like, if you add on to it a little bit, is that good enough? If he throws for 149 yards and adds in 35 rushing yards, is that good enough to beat Ottawa? It should be.
Yeah,
it should be. But do you really want to risk it? Do you really want to lean in or invest in trying to do that? Or do you just say to Masoli, listen, dude, this is a great game in Ottawa to get you back into the fold, get your rhythm back, try to build up something here. But then you're also looking at, this is the 3-headed monster dynamic of this quarterback room. It's like, Watford, I don't think there's enough there to develop. I don't think you really care to invest all that much in it because you got other priorities. So let's bring back Masoli. But then what are you bringing back Masoli for? Because the second Evans is healthy, regardless of how Masoli plays, you're going to put Evans back in the game.
Yeah. It is interesting because I think the Ticats still have issues on the roster in terms of that offensive line. You can't really judge how the offensive line played against the Calgary Stampeders because he was getting the ball out so quick.
Yeah.
And, it was a very basic, like you said, high school offense. So to be honest, I don't know. I can't, predict anything going into Wednesday in terms of how Hamilton's going to look. Here's the problem when you run an offense like that. You put so much pressure on your defense, not only for the game, for being consistent. If the defense goes out there and all of a sudden Dominique Davis throws 2 touchdown passes in the first quarter and you have to chase the game, it might be over. It might be curtains before things get started for the Ticats. Like, again, this is not a knock on David Watford. I just think the Ticats, if you're going to tread water like that and wait for Dane Evans to come back, it's probably not going to go well for you. Again, I don't know what the hell was wrong with Calgary. Offensively, they really struggled. By the way, I'll say this. Friday night, that was the worst in that first half, the worst returning exhibit I've ever seen, ever watching football. So Danny Austin was down there at Tim Hortons Field. He obviously came in from Calgary, and he was telling me before the game, Josh Huff is their best returner. Josh Huff is banged up. They do not want him returning kicks. So they put Daniel Williams back there on the opening kickoff. The opening kickoff of the game, he catches the ball on the sidelines, drops the ball, it then goes through his legs and goes out of bounds at the 3-yard line. I'm like, oh, okay. Calgary's already backed up to start this game. And then the Ticats punted after their first drive, and Richard Leonard is back there returning kicks. And I was thinking to myself, did Richard Leonard ever returned kicks when he was in Hamilton? I looked it up. 2017, he did have 7 punt returns.
Oh, okay. I did not remember that. Interesting.
Yeah. He completely whiffed on the ball, and it just bounced off of his shoulder pads and then rolled.
He tried to catch it with his face mask.
Yeah. By the way, shout out to Gordon White, the long snapper, with the fumble recovery on that one. It's a rare thing you ever see with a long snapper recovering a punt.
Sending a message to Aaron Crawford, the ex-long snapper for the Ticats, who's now with the Calgary Stampeders, was in attendance to see Gordon White recover that. See, this is why they went with me. No, Aaron Crawford signed with Calgary in free agency. That's not what happened.
Yeah. And then later in that opening quarter, Frankie Williams, he muffed the punt, and then Calgary recovered, and then the Ticats end up going to kick ball back to the Calgary Stampeders, and Markeith Ambles muffs the punt. And I'm just like,
it was weird.
It was the worst exhibit for a return game I've ever seen. But as for, what Hamilton looked like on the defensive side of the football, they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
That defensive line was in Bo's face all day. Was it 7 bat downs, right? Knockdown passes. Very rare you see that many. But for Bo, he was just having always a free guy, whether it was a free guy or a missed block out on the edge. That's something that you can look at and say, this is the backbone of our football team. That front 7, and the secondary is very good too. But that front 7, Jagari Davis, just out of his mind on Friday. I thought he played an unbelievable game. Julian Hauser as well. I don't know about you, but does Ted Laurent look way better than he did in 2019? For me, he just looks like more into the game, and he's making more plays, just more forceful as next to Dylan Wynn, being dominant on the inside.
I haven't looked closely enough at him. You've seen him live as well, which always helps. But for me, Jagari Davis was the best player on the field in this entire game. And right from the very first offensive snap that Calgary had, inside run to Kadeem Carey, and he kind of hurdles somebody a little bit, like hops over them. And when he does, Jagari Davis was waiting there and just picks up his leg and pile drives him. And I'm like, ooh, man, okay, he came ready to play from the very first snap. But, he jumped outside. He had a couple of knockdowns. He was talking some smack. He was the best player, not just Tiger Cat on the field in that game. But the kicking game has been pretty good for Hamilton as well in the last little while here, where you've got Bertolette now stepping in and handling all these responsibilities. Domagala obviously still doing the punting and had his moments here and there. But to your point about the defense, they've been really, really solid, I think, at all 3 levels, kind of coming into their own, getting more comfortable, working with that defensive backfield that's kind of been pieced together throughout the year. Bo ends up going 16 of 28 for only 170 yards and an interception. But then in comes Jake Mayer.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's the old Matt Dunnigan yards after beatdown, but but I see him go 9 for 9, look confident, throw a strike into the end zone, and Glenn Suter trying to start the conversation so that when he's doing talk radio hits around the country, he can talk about this. I don't believe Jake Mayer is better than Bo Levi Mitchell. I just believe that Bo Levi Mitchell didn't have a normal training camp because he was banged up, whether it was the groin, the hammy, whatever it was. Then he comes in to start the season, and he's surrounded by a bunch of guys that he doesn't have a ton of chemistry with. Mm-hmm. Then he breaks his leg. Then he's out with the broken leg. Then he comes back from the broken leg, and he's played 2 games on the road. Tell me which quarterback you think in the CFL is supposed, regardless of what you think of the quarterback, is supposed to go not a normal training camp, lose a bunch of receivers, break your leg, come back, play 2 games on the road. That's supposed to look dominant. Like, I understand Bo hasn't looked very good, but why should he? And
Yeah.
this is my thing with context of this conversation is, yeah, Jake Maier played well for the Calgary Stampeders. He had a normal training camp. He hasn't broken his leg. He's played games at home. He should look good. Like, if he's a professional level quarterback and the Calgary Stampeders believe in him, he should. So I was a little bit disappointed that Dave Dickenson said, well, Bo's got to step up his game. I understand that he does, but let's add some context to this. Like, let's be real. And you can say, well, Bo, he should be able to play under any circumstances because he's Bo Levi Mitchell. He's human. And if there's anything that the pandemic has taught us, is that understanding the human side of people and the way they operate and the way that they do their jobs, you know, like us working from home so much and people all around the world working from home, it's like, that's a human understanding of, oh, okay, yeah, no, you know what, that context actually helps. I don't believe there's a quarterback controversy. I think Jake Maier is very good. I think Bo Levi Mitchell's better under the right circumstances, with a training camp, without a broken leg, playing a couple of games at home to get his feet under him. So
Yeah.
I don't have any real need for that conversation. And I think that I hate when we try to create controversies for the sake of our own profit as media members, where let's talk about something that doesn't really exist so that we have something to talk about. No, if there's nothing to talk about there, be smarter and talk about something that actually matters.
Yeah. You know, Friday night, Jake Maier comes in, 80 yards, 9 for 9, throws a touchdown. The Ticats were 100% in prevent defense. It was just the way it is. And he was essentially just throwing underneath routes, and the Ticats were dropping, so far back. Their secondary was dropping so far back that, the Stampeders receivers were able to just catch the ball, turn up field, run for 12 yards, and then get tackled. And well, if you do that 9 times in a row, that's how you get 80 yards. Like that's the what happened for the Stampeders. Look, I think if your Calgary time's running out on this season, in terms of you have to figure it out fast, you already have 5 losses. Like, if we would have told you, before the season, 7 games in, the Stamps are going to be 2-5. We're talking and asking what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's happened is the Stamps being close in a couple of games. But outside of that, just struggles and inconsistencies. Like, the team that took the field in Edmonton was not the team that took the field in Hamilton. And I don't know what you do if you're Dave Dickenson. I think you still ride out Bo. But nothing from Friday night's performance tells me that this is going to go well for the rest of the season. I don't know what it is. Like, defensively, I think they were okay against the Ticats. Maybe they allowed kind of too many, plays. I think they had missed opportunities as well against David Watford. There was a play in the first half. It was Watford's kind of first big long field, down the field attempt, and it was a dropped interception. And I'm like, ugh. For Calgary, in a game like this where the Ticats are shortening the game, like, the time and possession in this game was ridiculous. What were the Ticats, over 10 minutes more with the ball than the Stampeders? For Dave Dickenson, and I know there was a third down play in the fourth quarter where Dave Dickenson was kind of, they went for it. It was, I think 3rd and 2. They go for it and they come up short, and Dave Dickenson just kind of drops this clipboard. And I think he's like out of answers for why the Stampeders are struggling so much this season.
Yeah, Kadeem Carey just falls down, and immediately Bo's head just drops because he's like, why? But anyways, that was the first game of the weekend. We should move on and talk about the other ones here. Toronto, Saskatchewan. If you want a full breakdown of this one, X's and Argos did a great job. They were up stupid late. Ben Grant, our boy over there, giving you great stuff as always. So go check that out as their game recap. But for me in this one, Nick Arbuckle has been so close the last couple of weeks throwing these vertical shots that, I'm telling you, man, the Argos are not an inch, they're centimeters away from being able to score 30 points a game. And if you can do that with the way their defense looks at times, especially their front four and when Sean Oakman is engaged and aggressive, then I think that's a really, really, really dangerous team, the Toronto Argonauts. I think people need to focus on their process and their potential more than the results in this one, because Saskatchewan playing out there is always going to be tough. And doing it in a week in which you essentially lose your defensive coordinator, and then Rich Stubler's back there calling the defense, and by all accounts, it's very different. Like, this was not one of those seamless transitions of let's just put in a new coach and he'll just keep calling what the old coach called and we'll all just move forward as people. It sounds like this was an extremely different defense the way it was being called and operated, because Stubes wants to do his stuff, and Stubler's stuff is different than Glenn Young's stuff. And there's Chris Jones wandering around somewhere in the abyss in the background, quarantining, you would think, probably in Canada, maybe I don't know. But the idea that they would go into Saskatchewan with that amount of turmoil on their defense and be able to hold Saskatchewan's attack with Cody Fajardo coming back to less than 20 points and get a victory, probably not realistic. So 30-16 is the final. Saskatchewan ends up winning, and Cody Fajardo goes 21 of 31 for 212, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Very similar stat line from Nick Arbuckle, but I thought Arbuckle was actually better in this game than Fajardo was. 22 of 33, 309, 2 touchdowns and an interception. So a very, very similar lines here from the two quarterbacks. But then William Powell has 21 carries for 122 yards. And there was a moment after the game where they were on the sidelines with about a minute to go, and William Powell sees Jason Moss walk past, and he goes, "Thanks, coach," gives him a high five, and he says, "Appreciate you." And that just felt like one of those running back things where it's like, see, when you give me the football, I have the ability to do this. Now, there was a lot of empty runs as well for William Powell, which you can get away with in the NFL with 4 downs. You can just have a bunch of 1 yard, 2 yards, 0 yards.
Yeah.
But when he had a couple of gashing runs, it certainly did change the temperament of the game.
Yeah. This game, well, I'll start with the Argos, was interesting from the fact of, one thing is very clear when I watch Toronto play: they need to establish the run early and stick with it. Problem is when you go into the breakdown 18-3, it's really tough to come back and stick to the run, right? And that's what happened. Like, if you look at the stat line in this game, John White 7 carries, DJ Foster 3 carries. Yeah, 10 carries between your running backs. Like, that doesn't bode well. That's why Arbuckle, put up the numbers that he did, because in the second half he was chasing the entire time. And, so they concentrated on the pass game to get them back in the game. For the Argos, I think Nick Arbuckle, again, is still a work in progress until we can say, okay, if he's going to be the starting quarterback for the next 5 years for the Argos, there's going to be some success here, because I see everything I need to see from Arbuckle. I'm still not there yet. But again, I liked what he showed against the Rough Riders. Defensively, I'd be a little worried if I was the Argos, because remember that defense in that first half, especially that first quarter against the Bombers, when the Argos, beat Winnipeg. That defense was flying around, making plays, and that really didn't come to fruition against Saskatchewan. So
I think that's a Stubler thing, though. I do. Like, this is why I take this game as a bit of an anomaly, because I don't know, again, similar to what I said about Bo, where I'm like, I don't know how he's supposed to look great. I don't know how Toronto's defense is supposed to just change a lot of the things they're doing, go on the road and hold a team to under 20. Because if your offense is not, the Argos should have been in the end zone at the end of the first half when they ended up having those 3 shots from the 3-yard line.
Yeah.
They didn't get in there. They should have had a touchdown on a drop deep ball that Nick Arbuckle threw perfectly later on in the game. They didn't get in there. If they hit on those 2 plays alone, this is what I'm talking about with their potential. If they hit on those 2 plays alone, you're talking about them putting up 30 points instead of Saskatchewan. If you have Glenn Young in as your defensive coordinator and you keep rolling with a system the players have understood through the first month and a bit of the season, I don't think you're giving up 30 points. Like, at that point, the Argos win, because they're scoring 30 and Saskatchewan's not scoring 30. So when I look at this, I think they're 2 plays away from blowing it open offensively, and their defense was not really their defense this week. So I just kind of shrug at this game. I'm like, okay, I know Saskatchewan's very good. I understand Fajardo's very dangerous, but their offensive game plan, aside from William Powell, the way they used Fajardo in this game was way more tentative than they have in recent games. I think that has to do with the concussion. I think they were protecting him. There was a lot of quick releases. There was a lot of not asking him to get out of the pocket and create the way he usually does. There was no called quarterback runs, I don't think, that I remember off the top of my head. So, to me, this game's an anomaly. Toronto looks very good. Saskatchewan's got lots of potential, and I just kind of chalk it up to, okay, a lot of turmoil in and around the Argos. They missed a couple of opportunities. Move on to the next game.
Yeah, and for me, I look at Toronto and what they're trying to do defensively, not a ton of pressure on Cody Fajardo. I think they had a couple of sacks in the game. But I think that would be the biggest takeaway from this contest would be Saskatchewan. When they lost to Winnipeg, those two games, their offensive line really struggled against Willie and Jackson Jeffco. I think their offensive line really just came back together and executed a little bit better. Again, quality of opponent we have to take into consideration as well. You're not going up against those monsters, but Sean Oakman was, ruining. He ruined the Ticats day in Toronto. So we'll see what consistency looks like for the Riders. I like what I see from Cody Fajardo, just terms of bouncing back. And if he's upright and he's healthy, Saskatchewan are very good. When he's banged up and hobbling out there, it's like a repeat of 2019 in that playoff game, where especially early in that contest, it looked like Cody Fajardo was dragging both of his legs.
Yeah, it's true. Shout out to Micah Tights, by the way, Canadian linebacker, 8 tackles in this game, which I thought was a standout. And I mentioned Jaguar Davis was the best player on the field in Hamilton, Calgary. My best player on the field, also defensive in this one, when I saw Dexter McCoyle Sr. running around making 8 tackles and being very, very active. So shout out to him for doing that. And how have we not talked about Kean Schaefer-Baker? Who gets himself 11 targets, 9 catches, 99 yards. Oh, should have had that one extra yard game. He should have just stretched and got that 100-yard game. But he ends up getting into the end zone, bouncing off tacklers. I sent this out on Friday night, and I just want to reiterate it for people that aren't on Twitter or don't give a damn about my Twitter, which is fair. Dwayne Ford called this. Dwayne Ford, and he'll never take credit for it because Dwayne is a very humble human being, but Dwayne is very rarely wrong when it comes to his assessment of talent, his eye for talent. And I remember going into the draft that Schaefer-Baker was in, I was like, well, this player's nice, and that receiver, and that guy's got great hands. And Dwayne just kept saying everywhere that I saw his analysis, whether it be CFL.ca and podcasts, he's like, this Schaefer-Baker kid's going to be for real. Like, he's going to be a very, very good player. And I saw the frame going into the draft, but I just didn't really see the full package. I was wrong. Dwayne was right. Full package is there. He's a great, great player. And it's fun, too, because when you look at the huddle of the Riders right now, you see Picton alongside Schaefer-Baker, alongside Lennius. And, when you look at the top of their receivers, 3 of the 4 were Canadian. I mean, if you actually include everybody, 4 of the 5, because Keenan LaFrance also had himself 1 catch for 18 yards, but it was Schaefer-Baker 9 for 99. Kieran Moore is in second. He had just 3 grabs for 30 yards. And then Picton has 3 for 27, and Lennius has 2 for 21. They obviously leaned very hard on Schaefer-Baker in this game. I don't know if that's going to continue, but I said this at the start of the season, the Canadian receiving talent in that room, they're not even using Justin McInnes. He was the highest draft pick that they had when they went with the 2 receivers of Lennius and McInnes. They don't have him in the lineup. So there's a lot to be excited about, I think, for the future of Canadian pass catchers in Saskatchewan, as long as they keep these guys in house, which Picton ain't going nowhere. I don't know why Lennius would want to leave, but Schaefer-Baker, if he plays like this for the remainder of this year, man, free agency, when that rolls around for him, be it this year or next year, because I'm not sure what his contract is, you can't tell me there's not going to be 8 teams that are going to be circling him, especially if a team like BC, if a team like BC loses Javon Catoy to the NFL, because he's starting to come on a little bit, and I think he's playing himself out of the league because his size and ability. I mean, man, BC would hunt somebody like Schaefer-Baker.
Yeah, and the thing about Keenan Schaefer-Baker in that game, there was a lot of comparisons on the broadcast to previous Riders Canadian receivers that had success in the CFL, whether it was Chris Getzlaff or Rob Bagg. I think he might be better. Just he's more physically imposing. Yeah, he's a different Canadian receiver. I'll say that.
He's more gets than Bag. I'll say that.
Yeah,
and he's not Fantuz level, because Fantuz is an alien and has always been that way. But
Fantuz is more of a possession guy. Schaefer-Baker, he can make big plays.
Yeah, but I mean, Fantuz was a bit of a jump ball guy coming out of Western, where he could get up and make plays vertically as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where Schaefer-Baker's at this point in his career. So, but I do think he's more Getzlaff than anything else. If you want to try and draw a direct comparison to these players of the past, Bag to me is out of the question. It's not really a comparison, because Bag was significantly shorter, thicker, more physical in the blocking game. But yeah, I mean, Kean Schaefer-Baker doesn't go down very easily. So I'm excited to see him continue throughout the season. I hope it keeps going for him, and I want to see him have great success because it was a great storyline and it was really fun to watch. The third game of the weekend, as we kicked off on Saturday evening, was BC against the Montreal Alouettes. BC 27-18. Lucky Whitehead is Brandon Banks of 2019. I've come around on this where I like Lucky Whitehead. I like what he's about, but now you see the stat line he's putting up: 6 catches on 6 targets, 133 yards and a touchdown in this one. He's become a deep ball threat. He's explosive. You can throw him quick screens. You can throw him vertical shots. It doesn't matter. I'm kind of tempted to do a side-by-side comparison of through however many games that they've played, 6 games right now for the Lions in 2021. What does Whitehead's production and the way he's creating that production look to Brandon Banks' MOP campaign of 2019? Because I got a feeling they're probably not that different.
Yeah, he has really become, a focal point of, that offense very quickly. I mean, it's still Brian Burnham's kind of receiving core, but Lucky Whitehead is, every single game it looks like, okay, that's a new wrinkle to BC's offense to get the ball in Whitehead's hands. And that's the thing that, good offensive minds do. They're great players that can make plays when they have the ball in their hands. They do everything in their power to get the ball in those players' hands. When I look at Edmonton, that's not the case, right? With, Greg Ellingson, again, second half, his first target. It's like, what is going on in this offense? But I look at Lucky Whitehead and Burnham. I really like what BC's doing. And if I'm a team in the West Division, I'd be scared about BC because offensively, they could put up 35 points in a heartbeat. And you'll be like, wait, we're on the outside looking in now. And, on the season, what happened? Well, Michael Riley happened with that offense. And defensively, they make enough plays. Now, in this game, it helps when the Montreal Alouettes are just kicking field goals and not finishing drives. When you're kicking field goals, you're probably losing. That's why, as a coach, I think I would have a mindset. And again, I am not qualified to probably say this. If I was a coach, I'd probably have a limit of 3 field goals in a game, especially if I'm losing and I'm behind. 3 field goals in a game. And after that, we're going for it on third down because we can't just keep kicking field goals, especially when you have Riley on the other side putting up big points.
This might be stupid analysis, but I do wonder if if you were to do, an analytical breakdown of number of field goals kicked by winning football teams, if there would be a line that if there would be a line that would be like 3.5, if you go over 3.5 field goals kicked in a game, what's your win percentage versus 3 versus 2 versus 1? And that comes down to opportunity, clearly, and field position, and a lot of things go into that. But if you're forced to kick field goals and you're doing a lot of it, yeah, I'm with you. You're probably not going to win a ton of games in the CFL. So Vernon Adams Jr., just 16 of 36. I wondered going into this how he would be affected by Kahari Jones being away quarantining because of the positive COVID test.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping, and I thought it was great that Matt Dunnigan said this in the pregame show on Saturday. I was really hoping that he was going to use it as a growth opportunity where it's like, you've always had your parent there to watch over you and make sure you're doing the right things. And then when your parent's not present for the first time, do you revert or do you grow? And do you use it as a moment to try and understand, okay, I can lead this huddle, not try to be the coach, but I can lead this huddle, give them an extra voice of calm and carry this team the way that they want me to, clearly, because they've invested in Vernon going forward. And I just didn't see that, unfortunately, in this game. And he's so athletic. When he opens it up and pulls it down and runs, he's as good an open field runner as there is in the CFL, I think, at any position. And that's saying something because Dakota Prukop looked great for Edmonton. But no, when I see Vernon run around, it's really fun and it's great. But then he struggles on throwing crossing routes. He always has. He threw some interceptions in the East semifinal against Edmonton in 2019 on crossers. He throws one behind and at the hip of Eugene Lewis in this game that should have been a touchdown early on. That kind of set the tone for the game. He has the scrambling play where he's trying to be creative and make the hero play. He throws an interception on that one. He didn't really have a growth moment, unfortunately, in this game. And Michael Riley goes 21 of 25 for 308, 2 touchdowns. They get solid contributions across the board from some of their running game. That I mean, Lucky, like I said, is the guy, but their defense in the back end, I think, for BC, it was just superior to what Montreal was throwing out there in this game. And I think BC, as you say, I would not want to play against them anytime soon because the offense is scary, but the defense from Jordan Williams-Lambert to Anthony Chiaffi to Lacombo is an all-star at this point. Like, he's a first-team CFL all-star at will linebacker in my mind. There's a lot of good ones out there. Simone's having a great year. But to me, Bo Lacombo is the guy at this point, and could be most outstanding Canadian as well. Like, let's be real about this. If he keeps getting interceptions, then he might be in the conversation as a defender for that award as well.
Yeah. Looking at the numbers in this one for Vernon Adams Jr., obviously the completion percentage wasn't there, but we've talked about it kind of all season long, the overly aggressiveness from Vernon Adams Jr. And the Alouettes offense. Well, it didn't change. It was 16 completions. He did have 270 yards.
Yeah.
Like, he is pushing the ball down the field. And they actually had the run game there. William Stanback almost 140 yards on the ground. Like, they had the yardage. They just couldn't finish strides. And that's why I think at some point you just got to stop kicking field goals and just go for it on third down, especially if it's within 3rd and 5 or closer. You just go for it and hope for the best. Because if you're kicking field goals and you have Michael Riley on the other side, they're probably not kicking field goals. And that's how you get the final you did.
Yep, no doubt about that. I agree with you. It came down to closing out the game. When you talk about the over-the-top aggressiveness of their passing attack, I've never been more thankful for it than this week where I'm calling an Alouettes game on television. Because, boy, let me tell you, that game in the rain between Ottawa and BC, I didn't have much vertical passing to talk about in that one. And so
that's why you got surprised about that Katoy touchdown.
Exactly. Yeah, I was a little shocked. So I'm very thankful to have Montreal, and I hope that Kahari Jones is back in the fold and get a chance to chat with him in the lead up to that game because I always enjoy our conversations when I've had the opportunity around covering the Hamilton Tiger.
What happens when a coach is not on the sideline? Does that coach still have an input in the day-to-day or the game plan and stuff?
Yeah, so I think that they said that even pre-halftime and post that there were text messages that were exchanged as well between Bolduc and Kahari Jones. So I do think that it plays into it.
Why can't Kahari be on the headset, by the way?
It's a good question. I mean, we have the technology. If we can zoom into everything anywhere, why could we not have basically Kahari zooming into a computer that's on the sideline, which
Kahari's in his kitchen in his underwear just calling plays on the play sheet?
It's the future, man. That's the future. Let's bring it to fruition. I agree with you on this.
The coach is working from home.
Yeah, why not? I mean, they already get paid enough money and just stay at home. And then the final game of the weekend for you here, Winnipeg against Edmonton. Taylor Yukon Cornelius gets the start, 19 of 33. 243, but 3 interceptions, and didn't even seem upset about the 3 interceptions because you could kind of tell he's just like, okay, I'm a new guy to the CFL, and I was probably going to make some mistakes, but if I'm on Edmonton, I'm like, yeah, I get it. They're Winnipeg. They're the best team in the CFL. Collaros does his thing. Again, I always say they don't want to throw the ball more than 25 times. 19 of 24, 252, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, up around 20 carries for Andrew Harris, 97 yards. I do like the way that Winnipeg has become so formulaic, because I actually caught myself, Kyle, the other day watching this game, and I had my head down and I was doing some work. I was tracking something that had happened in the Montreal BC game, and it was almost like this natural rhythm of the game where it's Harris run, screen to Dempsky, quick slant to Rashid Bailey. And then I had this moment where I looked up the TV and I went, oh, they're at the 30-yard line? Yeah, this is where Zach's going to take the shot. Right? Because you just get into the rhythm of how they want to call the game. And I'm like, yeah, this is where he takes the shot. Sure enough, takes a deep shot down the right side. Like, they are so patterned in the way that they're approaching the game. And I kind of love them for it because it's fun to see a team that is so in control of their own style. For Edmonton, James Wilder Jr., 14 carries, 71 yards, 2 touchdowns. He got after it for a while there, but this goes to show you that having a running back who's having a pretty decent average in the CFL, unless you're running for a pretty decent average on 20 plus carries, it's probably not going to make a difference when the other team's quarterback is 19 of 24.
Yeah. Looking at Zach Collaros' game charts, This is his last 5 games: 18 completions, 16 completions, 19 completions, 18 completions, 19 completions. You're right.
And all on how many attempts? Like, this is the thing too, is how many attempts do you have, because they
25, 27, 22, 24.
Yeah. It's the exact same game. He plays the exact same game every week. And man, I'd be so happy if I was Zach that I'm in this situation where it's like they want me to be an expert at these things. And it's like they put you in that bubble and say, Zach, this is your job. Because in the past, Zach has been asked, whether it be in Saskatchewan or in Hamilton, hey, do everything. Create, scramble, run around, look down the field. It was like very much like, hey, look over here, or let's go deep over there. We need you to fix this problem for us, or make a check at the line of scrimmage. And now he's just in this offense where you can tell he is, and it's not that he's asleep at the wheel, but he could do this in his sleep. Like,
Yeah.
This looks easy for Zach right now because of how formulaic it's becoming.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that stuck out to me in this game too, on the Bombers side, I think this was the coming out again of Nick Dempsky. Nick
Yes.
Dempsky looked like a just tank. He was running through tackles, it seemed, every single play. And I'm like, oh yeah, Nick Dempsky, still one of the best Canadian players that we have in the Canadian Football League. But for me, it's interesting because we had the conversation last week about most outstanding player and whether or not, if the mindset is true of, great players on the same team cancel each other out when it comes to, most outstanding player, whether or not Willie Jefferson, Adam Bighill, Jackson Jeffcoat all cancel each other out in that race, and it all roads lead to Zach. It'd be interesting to look up on completion numbers on, has a quarterback ever won the most outstanding player award with as little completions as Zach Collaros has.
Yeah.
But again, it's about efficiency. It's not about numbers, and it's not about numbers for, that team. And for Mike O'Shea, I think he's built something very special. And I had somebody in the press box tell me on Friday night, that, because I was writing the article for the betting perspective on the Winnipeg game at the stadium, and they were saying, oh, you mean the 2021 Grey Cup champions, Winnipeg Blue Bombers? I'm like, I'm not going to disagree with you. Like, the team is really good, and defensively, how do you crack that? Like, Toronto cracked it in that game, but it was a lot different. They were able to kind of jump on Winnipeg early, and it completely changed how Winnipeg had to play. So we'll see if that is a recipe for how to beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but it's going to be a tall task for anybody. And another question, after the Ticats won with David Watford and playing the offense that they did, does Dakota Prukop now start for the Edmonton Elks?
No, because apparently Taylor Cornelius is the future of the Elks organization, as was reported by Ryan Rashog, that they think that he is going to grow into this. And to that, I say, never trust an Oklahoma State quarterback with anything. Okay, like, I've seen enough of these guys, because they had the clip of Elizondo saying,
You mean Mike Glennon didn't do a good job in the NFL?
wasn't he NC State?
Was he?
I think so. Yeah. Wolfpack.
Who am I thinking of?
Wolfpack, baby. You're probably thinking of Brandon Whedon. But no,
Oh yeah, Whedon, the old guy that got drafted.
There's, I mean, I go back to like Zach Robinson and other just names from the past at Oklahoma State, and in Mike Gundy's offense, you're always going to get to show off your arm. I mean, to his credit, he is athletic, because Suter kept saying he's an athletic 6'5", he's an athletic 6'5", and he was. He ran around a little bit, and he moves better than I thought that he would at that size. But quarterbacking is not about how tall you are. Quarterbacking is not about how strong your arm is. Quarterbacking is not even about how well you move in and around the pocket. You can dodge and maneuver and get open and find throwing lanes and all these things, like Drew Brees, and I mean, Dane Evans is great at that. But quarterbacking is about being the complete package. And it's why I love analyzing quarterback play so much, because everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses, and everybody has tendencies and everybody has things that they don't like to do. And for me in this game, again, it's just the first start, so I'm not going to judge too much, but an initial assessment of Taylor Cornelius was, okay, if Trevor's on the 6th game, he's going to be out for a while. If they're going to actually go with Cornelius in this, his release is not that quick because he's a long guy, and he stares things down. And to me, who does that sound like? It sounds like Dominique Davis. Well, we've been crapping all over Dominique Davis for 2 years essentially at this point, because what is Dominique Davis? Big arm, he moves well, he's tall, he can see over the pocket. That's what Taylor Cornelius is at this point. So Taylor Cornelius needs to prove that he can look off coverages, that he can look to the right, come back to the left, fire it in, little dart here on a 10-yard in-breaking route, or that he can throw a comeback to the outside with accuracy and not leave it inside, that he can throw an out route on timing, that he's not throwing balls that he just hopes are going to be completed, that he knows the receiver is going to be at the right spot at the right time. There was not a lot of that in that game for me. So I just, to me, there's a lot of room for growth according to what everybody in Edmonton is talking about. But I don't trust Oklahoma State quarterbacks. I just don't, because I think they put up a ton of yardage and they show a great skill set, but that's not what quarterbacking is about. And look at Oklahoma State's ability to win Big 12 titles over the years. Like Oklahoma, I think, has had a pretty firm grip on that thing, or Texas. And I mean, not Texas for a while, but when I see Oklahoma quarterbacks, they have a lot of the production and the arm strength and all this, but they're more of a full package than Oklahoma State guys who just put up 1 billion yards and we all go, wow, good for him. It's like, well, what did we accomplish with it? I don't know. We blew out Iowa. Okay. Like, how is that going to make you a great professional quarterback? No. So
Yeah.
Again, I don't mean to bang on Taylor Cornelius here, because I think there's potential there. It's just first game, whatever, shrug. Okay, let's move on and see what he becomes here, I guess. But the initial assessment for me is I've seen this before.
Yeah. For Edmonton, I think they're in the same boat as Calgary. Time is running out for you to fix whatever problems you have, and that's a paralyzing feeling when you have your backup quarterback. And we don't know when Trevor Harris is going to be back now. But for Jamie Elizondo, he's got to work whatever kinks that Cornelius has and try to put it into a winning game plan. It's weird how the repetition of the CFL plays itself out. Jake Mayer comes in for the Stampeders, and the first 10 passes of a CFL career, he looks rough, and he's throwing pick sixes, and it's like, and then Cornelius comes in and he's staring down receivers on that wide side throw, and then it's getting picked off and running back to the house. And it's like, man, people, I think, are underestimating how difficult it is to play the quarterback position in the Canadian Football League and how different it is. And it can screw with you. Like the game speeds are different in the CFL, and to make throws, to the sideline, you better be chucking that thing as hard as you can sometimes, and not staring down that receiver. Like, it's got to be looking, head come to the other side, then you throw it. You cannot drop back, and your head doesn't move off of that, and then you're throwing it, because the defensive backs are too good in this league to allow you to make, that whatever it is, 45-yard throw on a rope when the guy is literally 10 yards away, maybe less than 10 yards away from the defensive back. And they're like, no, I'm going to jump on this, especially if you're staring at me the entire time.
Yeah. Anticipation, touch, accuracy, all of these things are super important. And I think we've even seen that with Bo Levi coming back off injury, where, as I talked about earlier, he's just not in a rhythm yet. He doesn't look much better than some of these other names that we're talking about. But also, to your point, it should remind people just how damn good Michael Riley is at playing quarterback in the CFL. When he has protection, that he can do the things that he does, because ball placement, accuracy, arm strength, pocket movement, knowing when to use his legs, knowing when to slide to protect himself. He has been special for a long time, but he's still playing at an extremely, extremely high level. So BC's going to shoot up a lot of power rankings this week.
Yeah, and I think it's important to state again, this is kind of the Zach Collaros argument. When you have a great team around you, it's about not making the mistakes that break your back. And Zach Collaros very rarely makes the mistake that, breaks his team. For Cornelius, he has to just go in there and use the unbelievable, crop of playmakers that they have on that offense. And I would say lean on that defense. And again, this is not completely on the defense, because I know Edmonton have turned the ball over a lot in, their own end of the field. And whether it was pick sixes or things like that, they've allowed the most points against in the West Division.
Yeah.
Like, defensively for Edmonton, it's not fantastic. And when your offense is struggling for consistency as much as it is, man, it is going to be really tough to string wins together, especially in that West Division where I think you have Saskatchewan and you have Winnipeg, and I think they're, clearly the two best teams in the division. BC's coming. But then for Edmonton and Calgary to fight back into that group, it's going to be really tough.
Get ready! Get ready! Let's go. A little urgency. Here we go. Let's go.
We're almost out of here. This is the 3-minute warning brought to you by...
Today it's brought to you by Canadian receivers. When you mentioned Nick Dempsky, one of the best receivers, I was thinking of where we stand right now with Canadian receivers across the league. The top 8 are all American, okay? Lucky Whitehead, Kamar Jordan, Kenny Lawler, Brian Burnham, Josh Huff, Markeith Ambles, Darrell Walker, and Geno Lewis. At number 9 is Nick Dempsky. He has got 24 catches on 30 targets through 5 games played. Again, he missed 1 game due to injury, so that makes it that much more impressive. After that, you've got yourself, again, another pack of Americans. Ricky Collins Jr. in Toronto, Jake Weineke in Montreal, Greg Ellingson in Edmonton, Eric Rogers in Toronto, Kieran Moore in Saskatchewan. Then you get to Mike Jones from Edmonton, Canadian national. 21 catches on 27 targets through 6 games. Rasheed Bailey, BJ Cunningham, Davaris Daniels, Jalen Ackland, Tim White. Keen Schaefer-Baker is the 3rd highest rated receiver that's Canadian right now. He's only played in 4 games, 21 catches on 25 attempts. Right behind him is Braden Lenius. In 6 games, he's got 17 catches on 21 targets. And then rounding it out, Javon Katoy, 13 catches on 15 targets, including 2 touchdowns and 2 gains of 30 yards or more. Both of those were his touchdowns. So I did not have Keen Schaefer-Baker or Javon Katoy being in my top 5 Canadian receivers right now, but Nick Dempsky is at the head of that group. So shout out to him, and congratulations on all of that. I have a great stat for you here on the way out, Kyle. We don't talk much NFL on this show because people don't come here for NFL, but I know you love the NFL. I was in awe yesterday of Tom Brady and what he did. I saw a stat that he has age 41 or older, because keep in mind, Tom Brady's 4 years old. Tom Brady, since turning 41, has 114 touchdown passes. 114 touchdown passes since turning 41. All quarterbacks combined in the history of the National Football League since turning 41 years old,
They'll come close.
the rest of them have thrown 109 combined. Brady has more touchdown passes by himself after turning 41 in the NFL than all the other quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League combined after they turned 41 years old.
Yeah.
What the hell is happening? How is this possible?
I don't know. I know Max Kellerman got replaced on First Take, but that was a drum he was beating forever. Tom Brady's done. I don't know when it's going to happen, but he's done. Well, he outlasted you, Max. You're not even on First Take anymore.
It's crazy.
Yeah. One last thing in the Canadian Football League before we wrap up the show. Does Mike Rose get suspended for nut kicking Nikola Kalinic?
That was weird, man. It felt like he saw Kalinic was trying to bury him, and he just, in a moment of rage, impulse, decided to show the bottom of his foot to Kalinic's midsection. So
I want to know why somebody on Prue's crew threw the 15-yard penalty. They obviously saw it, but didn't boot him from the game. I'm like, he just nut-shotted somebody.
Yeah, I don't know what the punishment's going to be on that one, but I would imagine that's not something they want to be in the league, so we'll see where it goes from there. Don't forget, OUA.TV is the place that you can get all of your football games for Ontario University Athletics streaming live and on demand. OUA.ca for stats, standing scores, and more. Tomorrow on All Canadian, a deep dive into OUA week number 1 with the Western Mustangs rolling the McMaster Marauders and the University of Toronto getting off to a 1-0 start alongside the Queen's Gales as well, who go on the road and go into Carleton, come out victorious. So does Laurier, and of course the Waterloo Warriors as well. So a full breakdown of that for you. And don't forget to go ahead and visit fox40shop.com. Use the promo code CFP15 at checkout. Thank you to Fox 40 for making this podcast possible. And thank you to you for tuning in. For Kyle Melo and Marshall Ferguson, thanks for checking out Canadian Football Perspective. We'll be back here with a recap of week number 8 across the league next Monday right here on CFP.